It's the end of January and we're heading into late winter. It's been quite cold recently, hasn't it? And with the ever-changing skies, what can we expect to enjoy and what's coming up in our night sky in these late winter months? Let's have a look. And January ends with a full moon on the 28th. Now, the Native American Indians, they tracked their seasons with lunar months instead of the solar year. So what they did, they named the full moons of particular months after certain things. Now, the January full moon is named the wolf moon. And this is because traditionally they heard wolves howling more often in January than the other months. Now, 2 weeks after the full moon, so on the 11th of February, we get the new moon. Now, the new moon, you can't see the new moon because of the position of where the Earth is and the moon is and the sun is. So the sun is lighting up the side of the moon that we're not actually seeing from Earth. So, can't see it. But the day after, you will be able to see it because the moon will be rising just about an hour or more after the previous day. So a little bit later, about just over an hour later each day. Now, if you've got a pair of binoculars, this is a great time to start looking and observing the moon. You do not want to look at a full moon through your binoculars. It is so bright and you miss all those fabulous features. So if you've got a pair of binoculars, even just looking at the moon with the crescent is beautiful anyway. Pair of binoculars, so you're looking at the first day of the crescent, the really slim crescent, doesn't last for very long. But the following night, it's in the sky for longer. And then you can go up for about a week until you get to first quarter phase. Now, first quarter phase can be a bit bright, but you still can see those beautiful features on the moon, the dark mare and the craters too. So if you can, go out and have a look at that. So if we're thinking a little bit more about those Native American Indians and the full moons, on the 27th of February is the full moon after the 28th of January. And this one is called the snow moon. I wonder why. Have a think about that one. I think that's a bit obvious, isn't it? Now, the following full moon after that is in March, on the 28th of March, and that is called the worm moon. The worm moon. Why would that be? Well, think about it. It's starting to warm up, isn't it? It's coming into spring and the worms are all coming to the surface and leaving their worm casts. So the evidence of worm activity seems to be an awful lot more in March for the Native American Indians. So that's why they call it the worm moon. As far as the planets are concerned, we've lost Jupiter and Saturn now. They've been lost in twilight and now they've disappeared over the horizon. So we'll have to wait until the summer months again before we start seeing them back in our night skies. But Mars is still about. You can still spot it. It's not quite so bright now because it's moving a lot further away from us, but it's still in the night sky, so you can have a look at that. Beginning of February, it's directly due south about 5:30, about half an hour after sunset. Now, obviously, as the year progresses, the sun is going to set later and later. And Mars is going to be rising earlier and earlier. So it's going to be disappearing over our western horizon. But we can still see it throughout February and March, and we probably can see it up to about May time as well. So go out and have a look. This orangey dot in the sky is quite distinct, as we've said before. I've already mentioned the constellation of Orion in a previous video. And Orion, I said, was very distinct. And we've got a picture of it here. So, have a look. A lot of people see the 3 stars of Orion's belt. But it's a bigger constellation, as you can see from that picture. So where is it at the moment? The beginning of February, it is directly due south at 8:30. Now, I keep saying directly due south. This is because this is when those stars, the constellations, are at their highest point in the sky and very distinct and very much easier to see, even though you you know, you're seeing them all through the night, but it's the highest point is where people really like to look at these things, especially the Orion Nebula, nice and high in the sky. So by mid-February, it's disappearing. It's going to be its highest point in the sky at 7:30, end of February, 6:30. Can you see a pattern arising here? So think about it in March. Can you predict when Orion will be at due south in March? Have a think about that one. Orion is being followed across the sky by its two hunting dogs, Canis Major and Canis Minor. Now, Canis Major is the one we're going to have a look at now because it has got that beautiful, beautiful star Sirius, and Sirius is the brightest star in our northern skies. And you can easily spot Sirius by looking at the belt of Orion, and you look at those three stars and you draw an imaginary line and it comes down to show Sirius. I've shown you a picture of it here. Now, if you go the other way, I've actually added the constellation of Taurus as well, and that star Aldebaran, the red eye of the bull, and you can find that as well from the belt of Orion, but going the other way from Sirius. So have a look out for those. As we're heading into late winter and coming into the spring, we're going to start to see different constellations. And one of the more prominent constellations that we're going to start to see popping its head over the eastern horizon is the constellation of Leo the Lion. Now, mythological creatures, this is where all these names come from. And I personally believe that Leo is one of the only constellations that actually looks like what it's supposed to be, a lion, a male lion with a mane for hair. Now, you can find Leo from the constellation of Ursa Major. We've talked about Ursa Major in a different video. Ursa Major. Now, part of Ursa Major has got a pattern within it, an asterism called the plough, the saucepan, the Big Dipper, whichever you want. But basically, it looks like a great big saucepan in the sky. It's always in our night sky. Look at the circumpolar constellation video. So have a look for the pan. It's not always in the same place. It moves around that North Star. But take the pan and look directly underneath it, and I've shown you a picture of it here and how to find it. So there's Leo. It's pointing to the body, but you can see the body and then the head. And what you're looking for, and the more prominent stars, are his head. And it looks like a backwards way question mark, or a sickle, and that is again the pattern within the pattern that people recognise. That is the asterism in Leo. When Leo arrives on the scene, pops his head over the horizon, we know we're heading for spring. Now, at the beginning of the month, the head of Leo starts to appear over the horizon about an hour after sunset. Now, it still might be a little bit light by then, so wait for a little bit longer, maybe 8 o'clock, to have a look in the east to see if you can see Leo and the head of Leo. And then from the head, you can start to be able to see the body. And by 8 p.m. at the beginning of February, the body should have cleared the horizon. Now, it's not going to get directly due south at the beginning of February until after midnight. So let's think about looking for Leo more throughout February, and even better still, going into March, and that is when we're starting to head into spring, isn't it? Don't forget, of course, in March, at the end of March, the clocks go forward, so it might throw your timings out when I was asking you about predicting the timings of looking for these constellations throughout March. Now, there's a constellation next door to Leo, and it's actually in between the constellation of Gemini, the twins, and Leo, the lion. And it's Cancer, the crab. Now, I've put this one in. It's not that distinct to look at, but it forms part of that area of sky on the zodiacal band. So it is a good one to look at through binoculars because there's a star cluster in the constellation of Cancer. I've shown a picture of it here. Now this is a star cluster, it's an open cluster of stars. And the open cluster of stars, these stars are all held together by gravity. But you may not see it with your unaided eye without binoculars. But if you get binoculars on this area of sky, you might be able to see a denser knot of stars. And this is the Beehive cluster. On the other side of Leo from Cancer, there is another constellation, Coma Berenices. Now, this is quite an ancient constellation, and it actually used to be part with Leo. And Coma Berenices is a cluster of stars in Coma Berenices as well. And actually, you can see this with the unaided eye, and you see it as this denser knot of stars. Now, used to be part of Leo, and I always think of this denser knot of stars as the tufty tail of the lion. So you could follow Leo's back, arc up a little bit, and then you've got this denser knot of stars that almost looks like it's a tufty part of the lion's tail. By mid-February, there's a star going to be appearing over the horizon called Arcturus. Now, Arcturus is one of the brightest stars in our northern hemisphere, and you can't miss it. It's like an orangey colour. It's a red giant star, but it looks orangey. Now, this one's easy to spot with a name like Arcturus as well. We go back to Ursa Major, and we've got the tail of the bear, or the handle of the saucepan, if you will, and it makes an arc shape. And I've got a picture of that here. Now the arc shape arcs downwards to the star Arcturus. So that's nice and easy to find. You can also find it from the body of Leo. So just draw an imaginary line from the back of the lion and you'll come across the star Arcturus. Now Arcturus is in the constellation of Boötes. Now on that picture you might see, and I really think it looks more like a kite. It's supposed to be a herdsman in mythology. It looks nothing like a herdsman to me. But to me, it looks like a kite. And you cannot miss that beautiful orangey coloured star, Arcturus. So there we have more constellations for the late winter months and heading into the spring. Go out and have a look. Remember, be patient. And how some of these stars aren't that prominent, like we say in Leo's body, the rest of the kite of Boötes, apart from Arcturus. So be patient, have a look, keep looking, keep going out, and maybe, just maybe, one day, all those stars start ending up being patterns in the night sky rather than just little dots of light. Enjoy your night sky watching.